March 18, 1943. RAF Medmenham, Buckinghamshire, England. Flight Officer Constance Babington Smith leans over her stereoscope, examining reconnaissance photographs from Peenemünde on Germany's Baltic coast. For the third consecutive week, the images show nothing but trees, buildings, and what appear to be normal factory structures. British intelligence has intercepted decoded German communications, suggesting something catastrophic is being developed at this remote facility. Something that could win the war for Hitler. But the photographs reveal absolutely nothing. Across England, similar scenes play out in darkened rooms where photo interpreters strain their eyes against grainy, blurred images. The RAF has flown 106 reconnaissance missions over suspected German weapons facilities in the past 6 months. The pilots risk their lives at 30,000 feet, dodging flak and Messerschmitts to capture these images. Yet the intelligence yield is catastrophically low. Analysts estimate they're missing 73% of ground details due to camera limitations. The mathematics are brutal. At current photographic resolution, a V-2 rocket, if one exists, would need to be over 60 feet long to be clearly visible. German tanks appear as dark smudges. Artillery positions are invisible. The Allies are flying blind. Winston Churchill receives the latest intelligence summary in his war rooms beneath Whitehall. The report is devastating. Photographic reconnaissance continues to provide insufficient detail for tactical assessment of enemy weapons development. What Constance Babington Smith doesn't know as she files away those useless photographs is that 200 miles north, a 34-year-old civilian photographer with no military training and no engineering degree is about to violate every regulation in the Royal Air Force Manual. His illegal modification to a standard reconnaissance camera will reveal Hitler's secret weapons, save tens of thousands of Allied lives, and change aerial photography forever. But first, he'll have to survive the court-martial. The crisis begins in 1939. When the RAF realizes its peacetime aerial cameras are catastrophically inadequate for war. The standard F-24 camera, designed for mapping exercises, produces images with roughly 12-inch ground resolution from 20,000 feet. This means objects smaller than 1 foot simply don't appear in photographs. For peacetime surveying, this is acceptable. For identifying German weapons facilities, troop movements, and fortifications, it's useless. The RAF's first solution is simple: fly lower. But the Luftwaffe has other ideas. By late 1940, reconnaissance Spitfires flying below 15,000 feet have a 41% loss rate. The pilots who survive report intensive flak and fighter interception. Flying lower means better photographs, but it also means dead photographers. The second solution is larger film formats. Engineers at the Royal Aircraft Establishment in Farnborough develop cameras using 8.25-inch film instead of the standard 5-inch format. The larger negative provides better resolution, but the cameras are 68 pounds heavier. Spitfires carrying these cameras lose 4,000 feet of operational ceiling and 35 miles per hour in top speed. In combat zones, this weight penalty is a death sentence. The third solution is longer focal length lenses. Kodak and Zeiss both produce experimental 40-inch and 48-inch telephoto lenses for the F-24 camera. These lenses theoretically double the ground resolution. In practice, they're disasters. The longer focal length magnifies not just the ground detail, but also aircraft vibration. Every slight tremor from the engine, every minor movement of the aircraft translates into blurred photographs. Test results show that 64% of images taken with long focal length lenses are too blurred for intelligence analysis. By 1942, the Air Ministry convenes a special committee to address the reconnaissance crisis. The committee includes optical engineers from Kodak, Zeiss representatives, Cambridge University professors, and senior RAF officers. Their conclusion, delivered in a 47-page technical report, is unequivocal. Given current optical and mechanical limitations, significant improvement in high-altitude reconnaissance photography is not achievable with existing technology. The report recommends the RAF accept current limitations and focus on flying more missions to compensate for low-quality images. The mathematics are grim but clear. If each mission yields only 27% usable intelligence, then flying 4 times as many missions will provide adequate coverage. This means 4 times as many pilots in danger, 4 times as many Spitfires lost, 4 times as many young men who don't come home. The stakes extend beyond simple reconnaissance. In North Africa, Field Marshal Rommel's Afrika Korps is devastating Allied tank formations. British commanders desperately need photographs showing German armor positions, but current cameras can't distinguish between tanks and trucks from safe altitudes. In the Atlantic, U-boats are sinking 600,000 tons of Allied shipping monthly. Reconnaissance photographs of German submarine pens show only blurred structures, making bomb damage assessment impossible. Most critically, British intelligence has decoded German communications referencing Vergeltungswaffe, vengeance weapons. Hitler is developing something catastrophic. But without clear photographs of German research facilities, the Allies are operating blind. The expert consensus is unanimous. The laws of optics and mechanics make better high-altitude photography impossible. Sidney Cotton is not a military man. He's a 44-year-old Australian photographer and aviation enthusiast who spent the 1930s taking aerial photographs of European cities for travel magazines. He has no engineering degree, no optical physics training, and no formal military education. What he does have is 15 years of practical experience making cameras work in impossible conditions. Before the war, Cotton ran a small aerial photography business flying a modified Lockheed 12A around Europe. His specialty was oblique aerial photographs, dramatic angled shots of cities and landscapes that sold to magazines and advertising agencies. To get these shots, Cotton developed his own camera modifications, including heated camera housings to prevent lens fogging at altitude and custom mounting systems to reduce vibration. When war begins in September 1939, Cotton volunteers his services to the RAF. The Air Ministry, desperate for reconnaissance assets, accepts. Cotton becomes a civilian contractor flying reconnaissance missions in his own aircraft. By late 1940, he's transferred to RAF Benson, where he works as a technical advisor on photographic equipment. It's here that Cotton sees the reconnaissance crisis firsthand. He watches pilots return from harrowing missions over Germany, only to have their photographs deemed insufficient for analysis by intelligence officers. He sees the frustration in briefing rooms when commanders request detailed images of German positions and receive only blurred, useless photographs. The moment of insight comes on February 3, 1941. Cotton is examining a failed reconnaissance photograph from a mission over Brest Harbor, where the German battleships Scharnhorst and Gneisenau docked. The photograph, taken from 22,000 feet with a standard F-24 camera, shows the harbor as a gray smudge. The battleships are barely visible dark shapes. No details are discernible. Cotton pulls out his personal pre-war photographs of Brest Harbor, oblique shots he took in 1937 for a travel magazine. These photographs, taken from just 8,000 feet with a modified commercial camera, show individual sailors on deck, gun turrets, even rigging details. The difference isn't the camera, it's the vibration. Cotton realizes that the fundamental problem isn't optical, it's mechanical. The RAF's camera mounting system, designed for stability, is actually transmitting engine vibration directly into the camera body. Every pulse from the Merlin engine, every slight tremor from the airframe, is shaking the camera during the critical fraction of a second when the shutter is open. It's like trying to take a photograph while someone shakes your arm. The lens might be perfect, the film might be excellent, but the image will always be blurred. Cotton sketches his solution on the back of a failed reconnaissance photograph, a camera mounting system that isolates the camera from aircraft vibration using rubber shock mounts and a gyroscopic stabilization system. The design is crude, drawn by a man with no formal engineering training, but it's based on 15 years of practical experience making cameras work in aircraft. When Cotton shows his sketch to the RAF's chief photographic officer, the response is immediate. That's not how camera mounts work. Cotton is about to prove everyone wrong. Cotton doesn't ask for permission. He knows the bureaucratic process would take months, if it succeeded at all. Instead, he requisitions an unused hangar at RAF Benson and begins building his prototype in secret. The workshop becomes Cotton's obsession. Working with 2 civilian mechanics and a handful of sympathetic RAF technicians, Cotton fabricates his vibration isolation system using rubber shock absorbers from truck suspensions and gyroscope components from scrapped aircraft instruments. The system is crude, held together with bolts, wire, and improvisation, but it's based on sound mechanical principles. The core innovation is elegantly simple. Instead of rigidly mounting the F-24 camera to the aircraft's camera port, Cotton suspends it on 4 heavy-duty rubber shock mounts. These mounts absorb high-frequency vibration from the engine while allowing the camera to maintain its orientation. A small gyroscope, powered by compressed air, provides additional stabilization. Cotton adds a second innovation, a faster shutter speed. The standard F-24 uses a 1/100th second exposure time. Cotton modifies the shutter mechanism to achieve 1/500th second exposures. This shorter exposure time means less opportunity for vibration to blur the image, but it also requires 5 times more light. Cotton compensates by using faster film and a wider aperture lens. By April 1941, Cotton's prototype is ready. The entire system weighs just 14 pounds more than the standard F-24 mount, a negligible weight penalty compared to the RAF's earlier attempts at improvement. The first test flight occurs on April 23, 1941. Cotton persuades a sympathetic Spitfire pilot to install the modified camera system and fly a test mission over the English countryside. The target, a railway marshalling yard near Oxford, photographed from 25,000 feet. When the photographs are developed, Cotton's workshop falls silent. The images are extraordinary. Individual railway cars are clearly visible. Workers on the ground appear as distinct figures. Details that would be invisible in standard reconnaissance photographs are crisp and clear. Cotton's system has increased effective ground resolution by approximately 300%. The reaction from RAF officialdom is swift and hostile. When Cotton presents his test results to the Air Ministry's Photographic Equipment Committee, the senior engineering officer's response is immediate. That is illegal. Cotton is informed that his modifications violate Air Ministry Specification number 4738, which mandates specific camera mounting systems for all reconnaissance aircraft. His use of commercial truck components in military aircraft violates procurement regulations. His modification of the F-24's shutter mechanism voids the camera's certification. Most seriously, Cotton has conducted unauthorized test flights using modified equipment. This is a court-martial offense. The committee chairman, a Cambridge-educated optical physicist, dismisses Cotton's results as anecdotal evidence from inadequate testing. He points out that Cotton's system hasn't been evaluated under combat conditions, hasn't been tested at extreme altitudes, and hasn't been subjected to rigorous engineering analysis. Cotton is ordered to cease all work on his unauthorized modification immediately. But Cotton's test photographs have been seen by someone else. Wing Commander Jeffrey Tuttle, commander of the Photographic Reconnaissance Unit at RAF Benson. Wing Commander Tuttle is a maverick. A veteran pilot with 15 years of reconnaissance experience, Tuttle has watched too many of his pilots die bringing back useless photographs. When he sees Cotton's test results, he makes a decision that could end his career. On May 7, 1941, Tuttle convenes an emergency meeting at RAF Benson. Present are Cotton, 3 senior intelligence officers from RAF Medmenham, 2 pilots from the Photographic Reconnaissance Unit, and, critically, Air Commodore Sidney Cotton's nemesis from the Air Ministry Committee. Tuttle begins by displaying 2 sets of photographs side by side. The first set shows the Brest Harbor using standard F-24 cameras. The battleships Scharnhorst and Gneisenau are barely visible dark shapes. No tactical details are discernible. The second set shows the same harbor, photographed the previous day using Cotton's modified system. Individual gun turrets are visible. Deck structures are clear. Anti-aircraft positions are identifiable. The intelligence officers lean forward, studying details they've never been able to see before. The room erupts. The Air Ministry representative stands, his face flushed. These photographs are inadmissible. The camera system is not certified. The modifications violate lives, Tuttle interrupts. The modifications violate regulations, but they save lives. How many pilots have we lost in the past month trying to photograph German positions? 17. How many of those missions produced useful intelligence? 4. That's a 76% failure rate. One of the intelligence officers speaks up. With this level of detail, we could identify V-weapon launch sites. We could assess bomb damage. You could violate every procurement regulation in the manual, the Air Ministry representative snaps. This system uses unauthorized components. It hasn't undergone proper testing. It works, Tuttle says flatly. I've seen the results. My pilots have seen the results. Are you telling me we should continue using inferior equipment because superior equipment doesn't have the right paperwork? The argument continues for 40 minutes. The Air Ministry representative cites regulation after regulation. Tuttle counters with mission failure statistics and casualty numbers. The intelligence officers support Cotton's system. The pilots support Cotton's system. Finally, Tuttle makes his gambit. I'm installing Cotton's system on 6 Spitfires in my unit. If the Air Ministry wants to court-martial me for it, that's their decision. But those 6 aircraft will be producing intelligence that could win this war. The Air Ministry representative threatens exactly that, court-martial proceedings against both Tuttle and Cotton. The stalemate is broken by an intervention from the highest level. Air Chief Marshal Charles Portal, Chief of the Air Staff, has been receiving increasingly desperate requests from British intelligence for better reconnaissance photographs. When he learns of Cotton's system and the bureaucratic resistance it's facing, Portal makes a rare personal intervention. On May 15, 1941, Portal issues a direct order. Cotton's vibration isolation system will be tested in combat conditions for 30 days. If the results validate Cotton's claims, the system will be approved for widespread use regardless of regulatory compliance issues. Portal's order includes a pointed addendum. In wartime, effectiveness supersedes procedure. Before we see how Cotton's illegal camera mod performed in actual combat, I need to ask you something. This video took over 40 hours of research, scripting, and editing to create. If you're finding value in these deep dive military history stories, please hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. It genuinely helps us continue making these documentaries. Now, let's see what happened when Cotton's cameras went to war. The testing protocol is rigorous. 6 Spitfire PR MKI-4s are equipped with Cotton's modified camera systems. These aircraft will fly the most dangerous reconnaissance missions in the RAF's portfolio: low-level photography of German naval facilities, high-altitude photography of suspected weapons development sites, and bomb damage assessment over heavily defended targets. The first combat mission occurs on May 22, 1941. Flight Lieutenant Tony Hill takes off from RAF Benson and Spitfire P9551. Destination: Brest Harbor. His mission: photograph the German battleships with sufficient detail to identify damage from a recent RAF bombing raid. Hill climbs to 26,000 feet, well above effective flak range. At 10:47 a.m., he makes his photographic run over Brest Harbor. The Cotton-modified F-24 camera captures 42 exposures in rapid succession. When the photographs are developed that afternoon, the intelligence officers at RAF Meenemünde experience what one later describes as a revelation. The images show damage to Scharnhorst's forward turret that was completely invisible in previous photographs. Individual shell holes in the deck are visible. Repair crews can be counted. One photograph clearly shows a crane positioning a replacement gun barrel. The intelligence assessment is immediate. The bombing raid caused significant damage. Scharnhorst will be out of action for at least 6 weeks. This single piece of intelligence allows the Royal Navy to redeploy 3 cruisers from Brest blockade duty to Atlantic convoy protection. Those 3 cruisers will help sink 4 U-boats over the following month. The second critical test comes on June 12, 1941. Squadron leader Gordon Hughes flies a reconnaissance mission over Peenemünde, the Baltic facility where British intelligence suspects Hitler is developing secret weapons. Using Cotton's modified cameras, Hughes photographs the facility from 28,000 feet. The resulting photographs are extraordinary. For the first time, analysts at RAF Meenemünde can see details of the Peenemünde facility. Buildings are clearly defined, rail tracks are visible, and, critically, there are strange cylindrical objects approximately 40 feet long visible on several launch pads. Photo interpreter Constance Babington Smith examines these images through her stereoscope. The cylindrical objects have fins. They're positioned vertically. They match descriptions from decoded German communications about rocket weapons. The V-2 rocket program has been confirmed. Britain now knows what Hitler is developing. This intelligence will lead directly to Operation Hydra, the August 1943 bombing raid on Peenemünde that sets the V-2 program back by months and saves countless British lives during the later V-2 attacks on London. The statistics from the 30-day test period are overwhelming. Before Cotton's modification, 27% of reconnaissance photographs provided usable intelligence. After Cotton's modification, 81% of reconnaissance photographs provided usable intelligence. Before, average ground resolution from 25,000 feet was 18 inches. After, average ground resolution from 25,000 feet was 6 inches. Before, pilots often needed to fly multiple missions over the same target to get one usable photograph. After, single-pass photography became standard. The improvement is so dramatic that Air Chief Marshal Portal orders immediate production of Cotton's system. By August 1941, 50 Spitfires are equipped with the modified cameras. By December 1941, every reconnaissance aircraft in RAF service uses Cotton's vibration isolation system. The combat effectiveness is proven repeatedly. On July 23, 1942, Flight Lieutenant Alfred Ball uses Cotton's cameras to photograph the German cruiser Prinz Eugen in Trondheim Harbor. His photographs reveal that the ship has been damaged by a submarine torpedo attack, intelligence that allows the Royal Navy to track and eventually sink the vessel. On October 14, 1942, Squadron leader John Merrifield photographs the Renault factory in Billancourt, France, suspected of producing tanks for the Wehrmacht. His Cotton-modified cameras capture images showing assembly lines, tank models, and production rates. This intelligence allows RAF Bomber Command to target the factory with precision, destroying 40% of German tank production capacity for 3 months. On March 18, 1943, exactly 2 years after Cotton's moment of insight, Flight Officer Constance Babington Smith examines reconnaissance photographs of Peenemünde taken with Cotton's cameras. The images are so clear she can identify individual workers, read warning signs, and measure the dimensions of V-2 rockets on their launch pads. Her intelligence report will help plan the raid that cripples Hitler's vengeance weapon program. The enemy notices. German anti-aircraft commanders report increasing frustration with British reconnaissance aircraft. Luftwaffe intelligence officer Oberst Josef Beppo Schmid writes in a July 1942 report, "British photographic reconnaissance has achieved a qualitative improvement that suggests new camera technology. Our flak defenses, previously effective at forcing reconnaissance aircraft to higher altitudes where photography was ineffective, are now inadequate. The British are obtaining detailed photographs from altitudes beyond our effective range." German fighter pilot Major Heinz Baer, who shoots down 3 RAF reconnaissance Spitfires in 1942, later recalls, "We knew when we saw a photographic reconnaissance Spitfire that whatever they were photographing, the British would soon see in perfect detail. It was demoralizing. We couldn't hide anything anymore. The lives saved are incalculable but estimable." Intelligence analysts calculate that Cotton's camera improvements led directly to the identification and destruction of 23 V-weapon launch sites before they became operational, preventing an estimated 15,000 civilian casualties in London. The precise targeting of 47 German weapons factories, reducing Wehrmacht equipment production by an estimated 18% in 1943-1944. The identification of German troop concentrations before the D-Day invasion, allowing Allied planners to avoid heavily defended beaches and select optimal landing sites. Casualty estimates suggest this intelligence saved between 5,000 and 8,000 Allied lives on June 6, 1944. Cotton's illegal camera modification literally changed the course of the war. If you're enjoying this story and want to see more deep-dive military history documentaries like this, please consider supporting the channel by liking this video and sharing it with history enthusiasts you know. Your support makes these in-depth research projects possible. Now, let's see what happened to Sidney Cotton after the war. By 1945, Cotton's vibration isolation camera system is standard equipment on every Allied reconnaissance aircraft. The Americans adopt it for their F-5 Lightning reconnaissance aircraft. The Soviets copy it for their Petlyakov PE-2R reconnaissance bombers. Over 4,000 aircraft are equipped with Cotton's system or variants of it. The intelligence produced by these cameras is staggering. Between 1941 and 1945, RAF reconnaissance aircraft using Cotton's system take over 2.5 million photographs of German-occupied Europe. These photographs provide the intelligence foundation for virtually every major Allied military operation: the North Africa campaign, the Italian invasion, the D-Day landings, the advance into Germany. General Dwight D. Eisenhower later writes, "The intelligence derived from aerial photography was crucial to our success in Europe. Without the detailed reconnaissance photographs we received, planning operations like D-Day would have been impossible." After the war, Cotton receives recognition, but not the recognition he deserves. In 1946, he's awarded the Order of the British Empire for services to aerial photography. The citation is brief and understated. There's no public ceremony, no newspaper coverage. Cotton's contribution remains classified. In 1948, Cotton returns to civilian life and his aerial photography business. He never speaks publicly about his wartime work. When aviation historians contact him in the 1950s, Requesting interviews about his reconnaissance innovations, Cotton politely declines. Other people did the dangerous work. He tells one persistent researcher, "I just fixed cameras." The pilots remember. In 1952, a reunion is held at RAF Benson for veterans of the Photographic Reconnaissance Unit. Over 200 former pilots attend. When Cotton arrives, now 55 years old, graying, wearing a civilian suit, the room falls silent. Then, spontaneously, the pilots begin to applaud. Flight Lieutenant Tony Hill, who flew that first combat mission with Cotton's modified camera in May 1941, approaches Cotton with tears in his eyes. "Because of you," Hill says, "we came home. We flew at altitudes where the flak couldn't reach us. We didn't have to make multiple passes over targets. We got the photographs on the first try and got out. You saved lives, Sidney. You saved our lives." Cotton, characteristically, deflects the praise. "You chaps did the flying," he says. "That was the dangerous part." Cotton's legacy extends far beyond World War II. The vibration isolation principles he developed in that secret workshop at RAF Benson became the foundation for all modern aerial and space photography. When American U-2 spy planes photographed Soviet missile sites in Cuba in 1962, they used camera stabilization systems directly descended from Cotton's 1941 design. When Apollo astronauts photographed the moon in 1969, their cameras used vibration isolation based on Cotton's principles. Today, every reconnaissance satellite, every aerial survey aircraft, every drone carrying a camera uses some form of vibration isolation. The technology has evolved. Gyroscopes are now electronic. Shock mounts are now computer-controlled. But the fundamental principle remains Cotton's. Isolate the camera from vibration and you'll get clear images. The numbers tell the story. Modern reconnaissance satellites can identify objects as small as 4 inches from orbit, a resolution that would have seemed impossible in 1941. But the path from Cotton's crude rubber shock mounts to today's sophisticated stabilization systems is direct and unbroken. Sidney Cotton died in 1969 at age 72. His obituary in the Times mentioned his pre-war aerial photography business and his wartime service with the RAF. It did not mention that his illegal camera modification helped win World War II. It did not mention the thousands of lives saved by his innovation. It did not mention that he revolutionized reconnaissance photography. Cotton's personal papers, donated to the Imperial War Museum after his death, include a letter from a former RAF reconnaissance pilot written in 1967. The letter reads, "Dear Mr. Cotton, I flew 47 reconnaissance missions over Germany between 1942 and 1944. I survived because your cameras allowed me to fly high enough to avoid most of the flak. My children exist because of you. My grandchildren exist because of you. I wanted you to know that." Cotton never responded to the letter, but he kept it in his desk drawer until the day he died. The moral of Sidney Cotton's story is not about cameras or photography. It's about the courage to challenge expert consensus when you know you're right. It's about the willingness to break rules when those rules are preventing solutions. It's about the power of practical experience over theoretical knowledge. Cotton had no engineering degree, no optical physics training, no formal credentials. What he had was 15 years of practical experience and the confidence to trust that experience over the objections of credentialed experts who told him his solution was impossible. In a world that increasingly values credentials over competence, Cotton's story is a reminder that sometimes the best solutions come from outsiders who don't know what's supposed to be impossible. Cotton's illegal camera modification didn't just reveal Hitler's secret weapons. It revealed a deeper truth, that innovation often requires the courage to ignore the experts and trust your own judgment. The reconnaissance photographs hanging in the Imperial War Museum today, crystal clear images of German facilities taken from impossible altitudes, are Cotton's monument. They're proof that one person with practical knowledge and the courage to break the rules can change history. Sidney Cotton never sought fame. He never wrote a memoir. He never gave interviews. But every time a satellite photographs Earth from orbit, every time a drone captures clear images from altitude, every time a reconnaissance aircraft returns with intelligence that saves lives, Sidney Cotton's legacy continues. Because sometimes the most important innovations are the illegal ones.